You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. So, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Changing Reality right here on WQHS Radio. My name is Harsha, and you are watching Changing Reality. So, Changing Reality is a show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life who are carving out a little slice of reality all around the world in their respective fields and positions. We'll be hanging out and interviewing change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, to even top executives, change makers, and even musicians and artists and inspiring individuals from all walks of life. The idea of having this show is to share with students, not just on the Penn campus, but from everywhere, about the real stories that make the world turn. And hopefully, these stories inspire you in a way to start changing your own reality as well. I wanted to start this show simply because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who do phenomenal things. And at the same time, they are super passionate about what they do. And it's their passion, talent, and hard work that actually creates the world as we know it. But we might not always know their stories, right? So that's why I decided to start this show. And on a personal basis, I founded and run a youth movement called Ascendance in Malaysia, which is where I'm from, where we collaborate with our Malaysian Ministry of Education to help provide alternative learning platforms for any student who wants to change their reality. We work with students from elementary to high school through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects to help them discover what they love doing, go out there and get real world experiences, and also come back and create meaningful impacts through having their own careers while they're still in school. To date, we've worked with over 4,000 students in 270 communities and have worked with and developed countless number of student-run projects, careers, and even student-run social enterprises run by kids between the ages of 8 to 18 years old. So if you have any questions about that, you can drop it in the chat below. We'll make sure that the links are there too. But today's episode of Changing Reality, we have someone who I personally think we can all learn a lot from. We have a very special guest. He's the one, the only Sharat Shroff, who is the General Manager of Microsoft Search and Intelligence. Though he is no stranger to Microsoft, and we will find out about that a bit later too, he is also a prominent figure in the tech world, having been a product head in Google, working behind the scenes on many of the tools that we take for granted today, and later became the director of Alexa for Business at Amazon before his current role as GM at Microsoft Search and Intelligence today. So without further ado, I think we're all waiting to hear his experiences and waiting to bring him on the show today. So let's welcome our guest for today.
Hi there.
Hello. Hi. How are you? Thank you so much for joining on the show.
I'm doing good. It was really impressive to hear about all the impact that you're having with all the efforts that you're doing there with children and with kids at Malaysia. So super impressed to hear about all your achievements.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very, very kind. And why I give that introduction is just because I feel like I've always been passionate about hearing stories from people, not just on the successes they've had now, but the journey of how they actually got to that success. And especially here on Penn, we have so many successful alumni like you, in a way, that has actually achieved so many things. And thank you once again for being on the show. And I thought we can just start off by sharing a little bit more about your journey.
Sure.
You started off as a student here at Penn for a while. Why did you actually decide to come to Penn? Or did you just one day wake up in Penn and be like, oh, okay, this seems like a good place. I'll just stay here for now?
No. This, I mean, UPenn has so many things going for it, right? For me, one of the things that was really interesting was the CS curriculum, as well as you have some fantastic teachers and professors out there. Dr. Susan Davidson, I remember, she was my mentor out there. Specifically, she was applying, at that time, she was working on applying database systems into bioinformatics and specifically that field. And there was an area of research that was appealing to me at the time. So when I kind of looked across the landscape of where there was computer science being applied into bioinformatics, that seemed like Penn stood out for sure. So I was lucky to apply and get in, and I joined the program. But the one thing that I have to say is, unlike some of the phenomenal folks that you have been interviewing who graduated from Penn, I actually never did complete my Penn education. I dropped out in 2003. So just wanted to make sure that I say that up front. That I wish I had got if I had an opportunity to rewind back. I would have probably done things differently, but nonetheless, I just did want to make sure that I stated that up front.
I think that only makes your story all the more inspiring. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about your time here? I think you were also, I think, a graduate research assistant here, and a bit about your decision not to continue here as a student.
Yeah, there is. Penn has a lot of really good. It's got a great CS program. There's no doubt about it. The thing that I really appreciated, like learning from Dr. Davidson, for example, was applicability of CS in the industry. And it was primarily research driven, right? If you kind of think about it, and so there was that was really going for it. The program itself is super diverse in terms of um, what are the various course offerings that were there, and what are the various programs that were there. The part that was, if I had to kind of go back, gosh, how many years? Almost 20 years ago, and kind of think through the decisions that I had in front of me at that time. um, there was an opportunity for me to. It was, if you were to kind of think back at that time, there was a lot of startups around, and what really it's not about the startups, but it's about the excitement that there is in taking an idea and then very quickly going out and building a product, and then putting the product in the hands of people and learning from it. And there was a ton of it. It's very similar to where it is right now in some ways, but in some ways it was also the first of our kind of IT bubbles that we had at that time. And that was definitely very interesting for me. I just wanted to definitely go dip in there and start building products. I actually worked with a small startup in a suburb of Philadelphia, and that experience over the summer got me very interested in actually jumping headlong into the industry. And that's why I was really happy to hear. Like at that time, I think for me the option was either spend all my time trying to finish up my program, get a degree, and then go do it, or have the ability to let pause on studies for some time, and then go ahead, go jump into the industry and go build things and learn through the process. Um, there wasn't a good mechanism for me to balance the two. So that's why when I heard about your experience, Harsha, where you're able to do both, I'm super excited with it, because if I had to kind of rewind back and about 18 years ago, if I had the same opportunity, I would have definitely done it. I would have basically taken a fewer number of courses, spent some time working in the industry, and enhance my skills on both fronts, and knowledge. I think of knowledge that I would get from Penn, as well as skills that I would get by actually going and building products. It was a very clear binary kind of decision for me that I was dealing with, and so I said, I'm going to take a pause in learning. So I took a leave of absence for about a year, and 1 year became 2 years, 2 years became 3 years, and very quickly, I never did end up coming back and finishing the degree. But again, given the opportunities like what I'm hearing, how the program at Penn has evolved, just the fact that you are able to run your startup and go and study at Penn and learn from some phenomenal professors as well as phenomenal classmates, right? I mean, you learn a lot from just interacting with folks taking the same course. And so it's really great to hear that because I think it is a necessary evolution that was needed.
Well, thank you so much, and I think it makes me feel better as well. I've been very fortunate to be able to take the work and study course, and as you said, phenomenal lecturers. A lot of my classmates are working adults, so that itself is a added enrichment. I feel sometimes to what I'm learning, and I feel like education comes and is most meaningful for me personally when I can apply it and when I see the application grow in a sense. And
That's
after, yeah, it's like something that's applicable. Yes.
yeah. And the other part is, I think for at least for me, when I study something and I can apply it right away, in the context of building software, it is just so much more sticky. It just is. It's firmly, So for me, the learning process is both learning through books as well as applying it on a project. So I think of it as the project based learning is super valuable as opposed to traditional. Here's a book. Go read through this book. Go, and then here are some assignments. Go do the assignments, and that really doesn't. At least for me, I mean, I'm sure different people have different ways of learning.
No, I agree with you. And after you took your leave of absence and things like that, I think you actually started at another company, right? If I'm not mistaken, you were at this place called Moberg
Mhm.
Resources. You started as a software developer, and I heard somewhere that you actually designed and developed a prototype integration portal there that kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, disseminated medical information to people in intensive care units and all. That's truly amazing. And did that give you that avenue to apply the things that you were learning that you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you that was the thing that was the starting of the journey that made me think about jumping headlong into the industry rather than focusing on research and finishing my program. Moberg and I think it might still be around. It's a small startup that was in a suburb of Philadelphia, and what we ended up building there was at that time it was state of art, but we've now naturally we kind of see this in every hospital now. But what we were doing is making sure that clinical pathways and relevant clinical information was available by the bedside, where healthcare providers are taking a lot of decisions in a compressed amount of time, and are working through effectively. They're just working through um, how you would describe as they're not only just looking at the patient's health vitals, but they're also basically traversing down a pathway of what is the right optimal treatment and so on. So if someone came in with a head trauma, then what are the various steps? And there's a specific workflow that many of these healthcare providers have to follow through. And so just being there and ensuring that we could assist the healthcare provider who's taking those measurements, checking the pulse, checking vision, checking breathing, and all of those things, and just making sure that it's available to the person. So we just created a service and a service that we hosted in the cloud and a software that ran locally on the devices, so that healthcare professionals could it reduce the error rates and increase the efficiencies. That's the best way to think of it, by assisting them to go through this.
And as someone who had prior to that had been in classes learning computer software, CS, and things like that, I wouldn't say without practice. I'm sure you had a lot of practicals and a lot of things that you involved with, but
Yeah.
mostly in a classroom setting. How was it like for you to transition into working on an actual project that had so much impact? I'd say. Well,
Yeah, and this is where I think it made a big difference. I remember we had, and some of my memory might still be very hazy, just given the number of years ago this was. But I remember we had courses in distributed system, we had courses in algorithms, and so on. And the assignments were great. The knowledge was fantastic. The professors were phenomenal in keeping the classes interesting. But the thing that I kept missing is the actual application in a product. It's one thing about learning about distributed systems and doing a set of assignments, and turning in some small projects here and there. It's another thing about when you're building a product and you're giving it to the hands of user and you say this, oh boy, I totally missed out this aspect of it. Because we tend to focus, because when you actually apply it in a project, you're getting a broader, what I would say, a more complete view of all the various things. You could have, you could build out a system that has got fantastic redundancy, but you might be missing something else, right? You might be missing something like performance, or you might forget about the usability aspect of it, of using a specific feature or not. And so I think that's what you get. You're more connected to all the parts of building software, whereas in classes, you're very specifically focused on a specific set of topics. So it's a connection. We need the connective tissue. At least for me, I found myself yearning for the connective tissue that not only took that specific deep knowledge I was acquiring, whether it was in database systems or whether it was in or whether it was in distributed systems, and then actually applying it in the context of a larger product, right? And that's the exciting part. That's what I found myself thriving on.
Yep, I agree with you. Like one thing that I normally don't mention in my introduction is I also run a startup that's in tech. So we do fast, simple, template-based websites for individuals. So you can have like your personal name card. So I've got like actually harsha.com because harsha.com was taken, unfortunately. But we basically do small services. And I cannot believe how much I learned when we actually went to market and we actually got customers in. And that's when I realized that there was it's not something that they teach you in class. In class it's either you hit certain criteria, you learn certain things, you excel in certain skills, but
Right.
then it's always like you either pass or you fail, or you get like a grade or a CGPA. In the real world, it's like nobody's going to grade you. They're either going to tell you, does the product work? Did you miss this out? Does it not work? And it's just a completely different frame of mind.
That's right.
And you obviously learned to adapt to this frame of mind very quickly. I think after that, you actually became a product manager at Google, right? That's awesome. How did that happen? Like,
Yeah. So for me, the journey from I actually spent about 11 years, I guess, at Microsoft the first time around. And at Microsoft, I'd spent time working on feature that involved that led up into that manifested in Xbox or in Bing and in Dynamics. And so those are the kind of three products where the work that I was doing kind of manifested in those three products. And for me, after a point, there was a period of time where I felt like I needed a change. I needed to not necessarily change of scenery as much as the Microsoft ecosystem is a huge ecosystem, and it's also an ecosystem that is very Microsoft centric, correctly so. I mean, it just built great products, and it's a massive suite of products, and so they're all kind of interlinked or supporting each other. For me, it was just stepping out of that Microsoft ecosystem a little bit was something that I definitely wanted to do, and so that journey, the desire, led me to Google, which has got again its own ecosystem. Google has got another massive ecosystem, whether you think about Android and Chrome and online services. It is and now it's cloud and search and ads and all of those, of course. And so for me, it was just kind of specifically wanting to go learn. I think when you're in a place or working in a specific area for long enough, you start becoming very comfortable. And the thing about being comfortable, which is always good, it's always good to be comfortable, but it's also the rate of learning drops a little bit. And so for me to kind of accelerate the rate of learning, I found it super useful to just step out of my comfort zone a little bit. And so that took me to Google. And one of the things that I was very interested in was the entire cloud ecosystem. and Google's desire to go embrace and make their technology available to the open source community was something that I found was super refreshing at the time, and so I ended up going there.
Yep, I think you spent years at Microsoft doing things that working on products like Xbox and Xbox 360, which we can only imagine working on. And then you moved on to work on Google Cloud, which is something that I think most of us can't live without. So, what did like working on all of these different products and things like that? For us, normally we see it from the user's point of view. So, and I think that you would have, when you came into it, I'm sure you would have knew these products before that. But from someone on the other end of the equation, someone
Mhm.
who's integrating platforms, what was the biggest thing that shocked you from your position about something you didn't anticipate that was important, that the consumers picked up in a way?
One of the most fascinating things in my journey that I continue to get excited and impressed is the sheer talent and passion about people around me. It is just it's hard to describe this. I mean, no matter the way I tend to look at things is it's best to think of it as being mission centric, less about a specific organization or a specific team or a specific um, product. It's tend to be about mission, and mission is expressed from the end user's point of view, right? So if you are in the mission of creating this amazingly wonderful gaming experience for every gamer on the planet, or a specific set of gamers, or for I mean, it's important to describe that mission in a with and having a clear understanding of what that mission is. But whatever it is that you're doing, right? The beauty of it is when you do end up bootstrapping a mission, there are people who kind of gravitate towards it, and people who gravitate towards it often bring with them knowledge, skills, energy, passion, and all of that just makes it really wonderful, right? And that continues to span through no matter what, right? Whether it was at Microsoft or at Google or at Amazon, there are phenomenally talented folks. And folks who are willing to share, and folks who are willing to lean in, and so that I personally, it's always, whether I'm working right now, and I'll run into folks who look at the same mission but with a different perspective and bring something in, and kind of or take on or go way beyond what is being asked for because they really care about something, right? There would be people who would go above and beyond to go build this phenomenal experience on Xbox because they really cared about it. It was not as much as, hey, I need to go get, I'm doing this as a job, or I'm doing this, more often than not, people are excited about what they're doing. And that leads to some great, really interesting things. I'm not sure if I'm necessarily answering your question, but I think it is, so that was one thing that continues to delight me, continues to surprise me even right now. In terms of, when you look at the kind of problems that whether we are working on, whether it is happens to be in search, or that happens to be in gaming, or that happens to be in cloud, or Alexa, uh, the problem space is something where it's I continue to learn from folks around me on the need to kind of bet long, right? I mean, we all kind of have this approach saying, oh, we know how this is going to look like, right? I mean, if you're rewound back to several years ago, people would have said, "Oh, I think we've done everything that we could do on the phone." And then, of course, the iPhone came out, and it was delightful. And now we've passed it, and we are saying, "Okay, iPhone is there. What else can this device do?" So I think we kind of look at the longer arc, or a longer arc of time. It's all of these, all the people in the groups that I'm working in are folks who kind of bet long, who have, in some ways, they take bets on things that you probably will never end up actually reaching and achieving and saying I'm done, right? So it just continues to go on and on. Um, uh, yeah, so it's those kind of things that I find personally super exciting, and every now and then we'll I think we have achieved at a destination and we're done with it, and then I'll run that I'll get surprised saying, wow, there is more to do because users want more. right? We started off like I'll give you an example. We started off by building both an infrastructure and a platform that allowed us to increase the performance for online services in Bing, for example, and that very quickly grew into something more. Users were not happy with 800 milliseconds of time that it takes to load a page. They wanted 300 milliseconds, and because they wanted to be faster because their application. They wanted to use the same infrastructure, not just as a pass through for the network. They wanted to run compute loads in there. Developers said, boy, if I could run compute loads in there, wouldn't that be great? So just that evolution of, if you're listening to our customers in this case, or our users in this case, there might be end users, there might be developers, and just having them, being with them on the journey and realizing that they are the drivers, the locomotives for us to push harder, to aspire for greater things. I think I can't recollect. I think this is attributed to Jeff Bezos when he talks about building the most customer-centric company. One of the statements I think he made in one of those annual shareholders letters was, it's the beauty of our being so customer obsessed is our customers are never actually happy, satisfied. They always want more, right? This is a demand for always wanting better, wanting more, and just so kind of stay on the train. Even when you think that you've achieved and you've done everything that you could, you're surprised when they turn around and say, no, I want more, right? So
And how is it
your
from like?
question.
No, I think it does answer the question. You give us, I think, or 2 3 aspects that surprised you, and I think it's surprising for us to think about as well. So thank you for sharing in a sense. And I think like following up on that, it's like you. I like the part where you mentioned that it's about the users, and the users always going to want more in a sense. And has your perception of that or your view on that changed from the time when you started off as someone in the team or someone leading a project to your role now when you are more in senior management? Did you like, 'cause one of the things that I see with a lot of people who come up with the ideas and execute the ideas is it's harder for them to take customer feedback or client feedback when they are the ones who are very involved with the idea execution, and then they grow to a senior management post and then they realize, oh, that's what this client was trying to say, and it becomes easier for them to implement that. Did that happen to you, or have you always been very open to feedback in a sense?
I think almost all of us operate with some sense of bias in terms of how we believe that the solution is. We'll go in there and start building out a product, because we have a specific vision in mind, or a specific aspect of how we expect to manifest this thing within the product. And perhaps one of the most difficult things is building that habit, or creating a behavior where we're willing to listen to what our users are saying. But everyone will have opinions on how you should be building your product, and it's worthwhile to be able to do two sets of things: making sure the channels are open, so that users and your customers can tell you how they think about it. It's useful to also have the space and time to synthesize what you're learning and not necessarily react to everything that you're learning. And then there is a third aspect. I think it's important to recognize your biases, whether for good or bad. It doesn't really matter, right?
That's
But
the
it's
hardest
important,
part, but
yeah, it is super hard. And this is one of the things I remember. One of my first managers I had at Microsoft, my first manager at Microsoft, but he had always given me this advice, which I still hold true, and I still think it's valuable to me. It's valuable to everyone who's joining the workforce today. Is always go through a few iterations of building a product, right? It's very tempting to say, I build this thing out, I build this product out, I build this set of features out, and now I'm ready to go do something else. And you don't quite build out the second and third blocks, right? You go and build out your features, but you've not yet built that discipline and that muscle around listening from customers, and then synthesizing it and understanding, and then overlaying that with your biases, very, very cognizant about, very with conscious biases, right? And so that process takes at least a few iterations. And so one of the things that he had advised, I did what lots of folks do, is I built this thing, I'm now ready to go on to something else. And his advice was, no, hold on, just go through this a few more times, and you learn what you become much better at building those aspects of it. Super useful advice, and something that I continue to hold dearly, and also kind of tell others if that it's super valuable to go through this multiple iteration because of the feedback loop.
No, but that is such good advice. I feel like many times we're in a rush to complete something and move on to the next thing
Yeah.
that we don't see how we can maximize it through, as you said, the other two aspects of the internal kind of like review as well as the getting the customer feedback. So that is a very, very good point. And you built so many things, I think, in Microsoft. And one of the things that I think that I found very intriguing was the Microsoft front door. I think you headed the team, you started the team in a sense. And Microsoft front door, if I'm not mistaken, is responsible for almost all the aspects of program and product management for Microsoft Edge, and I think it's various platforms. How did you come up with this idea in a way?
Yes.
It's so much to it.
This was actually again one of the things where you go through it a few iterations, and then you realize that there is two aspects. So just to give you a perspective, the front door is really you can think of it as platform and infrastructure that allows you to speed up every application, every Microsoft application, where you have requests coming in, and they go through the internet, and they eventually come and hit some data center somewhere. And so that process of transporting, the transport layer that exists between a user's device and the data center, can take several milliseconds to several seconds. And then that's also the place where you have a lot of what I would consider folks who are trying to bring down a system, like distributed denial of service and so on and so forth, where people are trying to attack this, attack your service and try to bring it down. Happens typically at that point where if you ensure that no packets reach the service that's sitting in the data center, then your application is down, for that matter, right? And so what the front door does is, it's basically, think of it as both infrastructure and a set of services that sits on top there and protects the services, the valuable services that you have in the data center, and also speeds up the transport between the end user's device to the data centers themselves.
I'm just imagining, like, from my device to the data center, the information going whoop, and then after that, having this tool as like a catalyst to make it faster in a sense.
That's right. And so the way to think of it is, and so the way we started off was, actually we built a small set of services that literally sat in the data center just in front of the services for Bing. And as we learned more about the business and heard feedback from the users and observed the data coming in from the users, we started pushing that out from the data centers closer and closer towards end users' devices, which requires us to rethink how if you think of how do we geolocate all these services? How do we make sure that the front door, which was sitting in a data center originally, is now sitting closer in terms of network distance, is sitting closer to your PC or your phone, and so that requires us to literally rethink or reframe how we go about managing the Microsoft front door. And actually, it's now evolved. The front door is now evolved where it's now become an Azure service. So it's my teammates whom I work with have all stuck on that mission and continued on over, it's more than 6-7 years since I left that team, maybe longer. But they've all continued on, and now it's a service that now any developer building any application in any part of the world can end up using this service. So it's no more Microsoft centric alone. It's just now available to any developer of any application worldwide.
But that is very amazing. And as the person who founded it and brought the team together, how did you get, like, as you said, everyone has their own internal biases. Everyone, I think, has their strengths and weaknesses. But as the person who founded it and kind of led this team, how did you bring people together to achieve such a big task? Especially because I think the programming world is one of the most, I feel, stressful industries. You get one line of code wrong, and then your hard-earned work for the whole day is gone. So, how did you manage all of this different
Well, it's
yeah.
it's rarely one person. It's always a team, and I think we are well past the days where one person necessarily. There might be a person who's a figurative lead or a head or whatever within a team, but it really requires the entire team to lean in. This was a team of at that time it was about, I would say it was close to about 100 folks. Every one of them brought something to the team, pushed us all, everyone around them. I think it really boils down to a couple of things. I think creating a mission is important, and creating along with the mission, there's got to be something of what does success look like. Having a theory of success.
Having a goal in a sense,
Yeah,
and
as in a goal, like I think of three things, right? That you need to also add to a mission, which is a direction, a specific goal, like a specific point. You say everyone head in this direction, and we want to be there in 2 years or 3 years, and then knowing how to measure yourself, right? How do you measure progress? I mean, those are the three kind of important catalysts that you need in that kind of that should go along with the mission. That is one piece. The second piece is the culture. Creating a culture where I actually won't take the credit for it. I'll take all my teammates around me who did a fantastic job of helping us all create a culture that allowed us um, to collaborate and connect with each other. And so when you've got those two pieces, it really doesn't matter in how you present yourself within the team, because everyone is bringing something to the team. They're already signed up for that mission. They have embraced the culture. It doesn't matter whether you're an engineer or a manager or a GM. It really doesn't matter, or a VP. It really doesn't matter. People attach themselves at the end of it to specific missions. And then it doesn't matter whether you're a developer or a product owner or a product manager. Again, it is being it's being attached to the mission is super important. Is the best way I think of it.
that's very amazing. And this is not, and you've built so many products since then. The success of this itself speaks for itself. But after that, you went to Google. If I'm not mistaken, you even did products such as, I think, Google App Engine, and then you worked on the Google Cloud products as well, which in itself, I think, as I mentioned earlier, is something that all of us take for granted now. Google Cloud Stack Driver, among a few others. Out of your experiences of working on these different things and all, what do you think makes or break so a successful project? Because today you have hundreds of software developers coming together, forming startups or coming up with ideas. Not everything works, but you have seemed to actually bring a lot of these ideas to life. So, what was the component or the components that you feel enable that to happen?
Yeah. I think it's so. I'll stress on the fact that it's not just one person who brings the product to life; it's the team that brings the product to life. The If I had to think of necessary, not necessarily sufficient, but necessary ingredients, um, uh, it is um, it is not just the idea alone. Is what I mean. If you'd asked me this 20 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, if I just had a great idea."
Yep,
Uh,
everyone's waiting for their $1 million idea, right?
right? It's not just the idea alone. I think it is the idea combined with a set of folks who are passionate about the same idea. It's about building a culture within the team that allows you to that allows people to present themselves in no matter what with so that is the third one. And I think the fourth one, perhaps we don't think about it as much, but I think it's critical, is execution. It's relentless execution of those ideas. It's not the exciting thing. Most of us get wrapped up around, oh, this is such a cool idea, and I can write about this, I can talk about this. But at the end of it, it is really about that execution of those ideas. I think that as people do say, ideas are a dime a dozen. That there are literally lots of people who come up with ideas. It's really about, and the execution is where I do think about the feedback loop, about being able to, um, over time, be able to perhaps change directions because you heard the right thing, so you've seen the industry evolve in a different way, and those are all important pieces to this, right? And yeah, so that's the other part. I think that might be a useful ingredient, a necessary ingredient.
Yep, I like that relentless execution of the idea. I think that that is a step that many people need to remind themselves of more than just having the ideas. I mean, as you said, it's nice to have an idea. It's nice to talk about an idea, but relentless execution makes or breaks it.
Yeah,
And
it's also I mean, it takes. I would say, you know, more often than not, it is this execution which takes up more than 80-90% of the effort. It is, whether it's writing code or whether it is ensuring that you've got the right feedback loop, or making subtle changes, or small changes that allows you to go kind of readjust your plans and your goals, and so on. So it's that iterative process that takes up, I would say, the largest portion of building out successful products.
and you've seen this from the very beginning, being someone who was a project manager to eventually becoming a senior lead in both Microsoft and then eventually Google. And then after that, you actually became, in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, the director of Alexa for Business. And Alexa only launched in 2017 itself. So, or Alexa for Business only launched in 2017, if I'm to be specific. So, how is that execution part come in for a product at this scale, especially for you who was new to Amazon in a sense compared to your time in Microsoft and Google? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, the folks, again, a lot of this goes back to, there are a lot of um, uh, folks who are already thinking about where Alexa could be expanded into. I mean, Alexa was already sitting on millions of homes, on the kitchen, on the kitchen counters, or on tables, and so on and so forth. And when I joined Amazon at the time, it was very specifically for this role. I mean, I was looking at how we could be changing how we work. It's, our work, the way we have worked, hasn't really changed for years. And so one of the things that that to me was really helpful was there were already a set of very talented folks at Amazon who were already thinking about this. So for me, it was kind of going and joining that group of folks and saying, "Hey, let's talk about let's start actually having an idea of how can Alexa really go change the workplace." And workplace is again so broad, right? There are frontline workers who are everything from, they're picking up your groceries and delivering it home, all the way to people sitting in front of a keyboard and a monitor and doing their work. And so there are different ways where Alexa itself can be applied into each of those various scenarios, right? The massive spectrum of scenarios. And one of the early theses that we had was, how do we make sure that we are able to create a service, not just the device. The device was actually easier because Amazon was churning out Alexa devices like there's no end, and then so and there was also a large 3P ecosystem where they had enabled other device manufacturers to embed Alexa into those devices. So for us, it was primarily about the service. Like, what is the service in the back end that allows us to um, uh, use that massive that massive momentum that was there behind Alexa, and see how we could apply it into the workplace. And so that's how our journey began there.
And Amazon themselves used Alexa during this time, I think, very well. I think I read somewhere at least, I think, over 700 meetings or something. Or, yep, I think it was about 700 of your conference rooms actually already had Alexa installed. And I think 70% of your meetings were started by Alexa. And was that the culture there? Were you guys using this tool in your business operations itself? And if so,
Yeah.
how did that help you shape how other companies or other organizations could use it as well? Was it an important factor in it?
I think in most tech companies, you're going to see a culture of what's called dog fooding, right? I mean, so do you end up using the same services that our customers are using or are we building for, and just use it and be obsessive about using it and filing bugs and so on and so forth. So even before we actually launched Alexa for Business in the conference room, of course, Alexa for Business manifests in so many different ways in hospitality, in retail, and healthcare, and so on and so forth. But one of the scenarios was in conference rooms. You walk in and just say, "Start my meeting," and it just starts your meeting. It knows who you are. It knows what meeting that's scheduled in that room. Knows who all it needs to contact, and then just lights up and turns on everything, and the meeting gets started. Great scenario, super helpful. It takes about 5 minutes, typically 5 to 10 minutes, for people to go get the meeting started, and this would happen in 20 seconds. And that scenario was great, but the key part for us was while we had the scenarios, we could go build it out. We needed to make sure that even before we send it out to the users and customers, we were utilizing it ourselves. So we basically went and retrofitted many buildings within Amazon's conference room. And it was literally going in there and plugging it in and making sure that we configure the service so that it's aware of the conference room, the building, the participants, and who's scheduled the meetings, and so on and so forth. So that the moment people walked in and just and said, "Join my meeting" or "Start my meeting," we would just go. We would be able to connect to a whole bunch of services and light up the meeting. But that process was super valuable because you get a ton of bugs. We are most companies are really good critics of their own products. So we would have a lot of people filing bugs, and every one of those bugs are super valuable because in the end, it just makes that service better, right? And so it's and that's the unique part of building software. You can indeed utilize a lot of the services yourself and then experience it and say what you like or you don't like about it. Of course, there is always the bias part of it is important, right? I mean, always realizing that this is coming from a small subset of people, which is within Amazon, which means they've already drunk the Alexa Kool-Aid and so on and so forth. But it's still very valuable. It's still extremely valuable because then you start broadening that from more than just within the company to a larger group of folks, to even larger, and then eventually to the world. You learn with every one of those expanding of rings.
And now, like in like getting all of these bugs and feedback and things like that, again, it's something that you as the director at that point in time, you're no longer the person directly working on solving all of the problems. When you've got this team now that you need to manage things like that, how do you manage the morale of the team? Is everyone excited like you are, like, okay, we've got improvement, or did everyone go like, oh no, another bug they have to fix and things like that? And if so, either way, how did you manage it?
I think it's useful to think about what are the framing or scaffolding that you want to provide to the team that allows them to. So there are, when you kind of think of it, not every day is a great day, right? You're going to have some great days, and you're going to have some not so great days. And I think the interesting thing from a leader's point of view um, is reminding folks of there is a larger goal to this, and so it's okay. We'll have setbacks, and we're guaranteed going to have setbacks on any journey. Um, uh, Focusing not about the current moment in time, but about the journey where we have come from and where we are going to go is another useful thing. Creating clarity at any point, because every time when you are in a process of crisis, there is lack of clarity. And so often that does require all of us, and sometimes the leaders more than others, is to kind of step back and say, how can I provide enough clarity to this, to where we are right now, so we can then pick up and move forward. And so those are some of the kind of classic tools. And it's even more so with the pandemic right now, with every one of us working from home, right? I mean, this has been my office. This is for the last over a year, and it'll continue to be like this for another several months. So in this, it's even more important to be able to kind of set aside time to go connect with folks um, and and uh, and kind of reinvent how we hung out together as a team.
Yep. And moving the conversation to your role today, General Manager, Microsoft Search and Intelligence. Um, it's we've all like tech is something that is very software driven. We all know everything, like it revolves around the computer in a sense, the internet. But having to work in a pandemic with everyone remote, I think really puts to the test how savvy we are with the putting translating our emotional intelligence into the internet world in a way. So for you now, as a general manager, as someone who has had years of experience at Microsoft and all of these different companies, what were the lessons that enabled you to still manage your team, keep yourself on toes during this pandemic, in a sense?
Yeah, I think um, one of the things that we learned early on, within about the first 3 months or so, is everyone is impacted by the pandemic, every single person, and people are impacted differently. So, everyone had their own way of how the pandemic hit them. Whether it doesn't matter whether you were actually sick with COVID, which actually adds a lot more. It does matter if you're fallen
That would
sick.
be another problem by
Right,
itself.
that is the thing. But even if you were not, right, just the fact of working from home changes the dynamics in so many ways. The lines between work and life just got blurred a lot. We also noticed, specifically within Microsoft, where we do have the data points and we spend a lot of time collecting the data, that people were working harder. They were working harder. They were, probably doing an entire day's worth more in the same 5-day week. And so it's all those data points. The fact that in another 5 to 10 minutes, my kids will come rushing in saying, "Hey, it's snack time," and and it's a part of it. And so, first of all, just creating that space within the team, just realizing that my dog could come in or my kids could come in and demand my attention. And so, for folks to kind of say, "Yeah, this is going to happen," so it's okay, it's perfectly okay. For And so expanding how we thought about work, or doing work, and how we did work, that changed. And then the second piece was reminding everyone that they are working harder, and the lines between work and life is blurred so much that it actually causes more stress. And so reminding folks to take time for themselves, and to take some time off is another useful thing. I think Microsoft just did a fantastic thing, that at one point they basically said, we'll give everyone an entire week, which they can distribute in any way they want across the entire year, of what they call as well-being days, where you needed a Friday to catch up on your home stuff, just do it. Or you had Wednesday, you had to go and do a bunch of things to help your kids with assignments, and go do it, right? So they provided that, being super flexible. Another useful thing that I learned from someone on the team is also announcing your availability, because everyone is available at different times. Like, for example, when I'm making some snacks for the kids, I'm not available. I don't want to be distracted. I don't want meetings scheduled at that time. And so, because our kids are at home too. They're studying from home, right? School is all done remotely right now. So just advertising very clearly your availability, and also setting the right expectations that I may not be there to immediately answer, your email or your message because I am probably multitasking. I'm probably, taking the dog out for a walk and telling my kids, "Hey, have you got your assignment done or not in time?" Right, and it's those kind of things. And so just and I think just being more aware and sensitive to everyone has got their own different life routine, which is expected. But just reminding ourselves that how I lead my life is different than how you would lead your life. And because work and life are now so tightly intertwined, you're going to see some of that life and the different ways I lead my life, impacting how I do my work. And so that was super valuable, just reminding ourselves and then reminding the team that we're all in this and we're all being impacted differently, has helped a lot.
You mentioned earlier also that it's important to see not just the immediate, but also see the long haul, see where things are going, see the future projections. What do you see for the future of working life? Do you think this pandemic, this working from home, is going to leave some roots and leave some precedence in the future work-life balance that we all have, or do you think we will just one day forget it, like it was a nightmare or a dream, depending on their experiences?
Yeah, so this is great. I can tell you how I realized, at least how I started perceiving work and life differently. I'm not an expert, but there are lots of folks who are really thinking hard about this across large and small organizations. One thing that this has definitely taught me is, uh, you know, traditional work routines has been disrupted for me in a way that I'm actually ready to embrace this for the long term. What I mean by that is, traditional work routine was, especially in most white collar jobs, or most jobs, many jobs, I would say, is going to some place between 8 to 5 and talking to people, and interacting with them, collaborating with them, learning from them, and then spending some time, in front of a keyboard and a mouse and a computer, and either writing code or writing docs or reading and reviewing and so on and so forth. So you're spending, the way I think of it is that's just been the traditional setup for years together. Right now, just the fact that I can pour myself a cereal, check in with the kids, and then get in front of my computer and hop on a meeting. All of this within a 5 minute interval without having to drive anywhere is just very liberating in some ways. It just opened it just and then getting used to this process, right? It does take some time to get used to it. So I find myself being a lot more open to working from home. The other thing, that there are two other pieces here. We don't yet have a good solution for this interpersonal connection. I do miss hanging out with my friends and colleagues at work. I do like, meeting up occasionally during lunchtime and saying, "Hey, let's go grab a bite and just chat about how are you doing," and so on and so forth. That's tough because now you've got to schedule a meeting on someone's calendar to check in on folks. It is this. I don't think we yet have a good solution for it. The third thing that it definitely, the way I've learned is, the notion of fear of missing out is, which is one of the particular reasons why people ended up at work. I'm not always connected. People thought that if I'm not at work, I would not be connected to the most up to date information and all the happenings that's happening. That's not there. I find a lot of folks that I talk to are saying, yeah, it's okay. It's okay if I'm not in front of the water cooler at the right time, or if I'm not in front of, the
It's
lunch line,
not the end of the world.
and it's not happening anyways across the board. Uh, the the other beauty of it is we've seen there are some really good tools that have come up that helps bridge that gap, right? The FOMO part of it is a great example where we've now, by default, as a group, we've just gotten better at recording meetings. So it's okay, even if I'm not there, I can always review the recording. I missed a meeting on Friday morning, because of some schedule snafus, and by that evening, I was caught up, and I didn't feel like I was left out. I didn't feel like, oh, I missed out on something, right? And it's great. It's just having those kind of tools, right? and those tools are evolving. So we're changing our perspective, and so I don't know about I don't know about yet about. I don't have a super broad purview of all the data points to say where the industry would move. But I know, for speaking for myself, I am very ready to be working more from home than I ever did before. Like, initially I would probably do, I'd say about 20% of the time I would probably work from home, or 30%. I'm now ready to make that the opposite. I'm ready to work from home about 80% of the time, and spend about 20% of the time being physically at work.
Well, I'm sure your family and your kids would really appreciate that, and I'm sure we've all kind of
It
gotten
depends.
used to working from home in a sense, and finding that balance. And as you said, it also makes, I think, both work and home more enriching, because you kind of blend the lines between who you are at work, who you are at home, and it for me, like, it's just, I think, made us all more whole people in general.
Yeah,
So
it depends, Harsha, whom you ask. If you ask my kids, they're saying, "When will dad ever, when will dad ever go back to work and stop telling me to make my bed?" Right? And if you ask my dog, if the dog is super happy to see me here 24/7.
okay, okay. I shall not ask your kids and show them this video then where I've told them working from home is a good thing. But but you are right, in a sense it is a matter of perspective.
Yeah,
But one good thing that you've mentioned that I feel is a very nice note to end on is there is a lot of future technologies. There is a lot of things that's enabling us to do this more easily. And it's not that working from home is perfect. It's not that anything is perfect, but I guess we are just going through one of the iterations, as you said, of refining how our our working culture can be made better and better. So
yeah.
hopefully we continue this practice of improving the ways that we work with our teams, we work with the organizations we're in. And thank you so much for all of your lovely sharings on the products that you've built, on the experiences behind it, and how you actually bring people together to solve the problems and the solution, come up with solutions to things that we only often see at the user's endpoint. So thank you so much for being on the show. You've been amazing to listen to, I'd say.
Thank you, Harsha. It was great to listen to what you folks are doing as well, and how you're trying to disseminate information and just bring the whole community together. So that's great.
Okay, thank you very much. To all of you watching, this has been Changing Reality. My name is Harsha, signing off for today. Tune in again with us next Thursday at 10 p.m. EST, or wherever you are from around the world. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.